This screencast is a summary of Chapter 5 in the book titled Academically Adrift, A Mandate for Reform. It wraps up some of the arguments made earlier in the book and ends with the call to reform. So let's begin with implications of limited learning. The attainment of long-term occupational success in the economy requires not only academic credentials, but likely also academic skills. As we will see, attainment of a degree does not necessarily correlate with success in the workforce for our recent graduates. Here's a cartoon depicting a great recent graduate and his parents asking, what does he know and how long will he know it? Over the last 2 decades, the U.S. higher education system has grown only marginally. The rest of the world has not stood still. In an increasingly globalized and competitive world system, the quality and quantity of outcomes of a country's education system are arguably related to a nation's future and international economic position. These statements from the book could be the tipping point for change in higher education, because as we will see, the institution of higher education itself does not seem to think there is a problem. Limited learning on college campuses is not a crisis because the institutional actors implicated in the system are receiving the organizational outcomes that they seek, and therefore neither the institution themselves nor the system as a whole is in the way challenged or threatened. One of the reasons things are status quo is because students are coming in and for the most part staying until they graduate. Whether they are learning anything or not is another argument. The next section of this chapter is entitled Transforming Higher Education. It gives us insight on what needs to be done to change our current path of limited learning in higher education. Given that the problem of limited learning in higher education has such a diverse set of causes, potential efforts towards educational reform must be multifaceted and be directed at various levels for significant change to occur. One of these levels is at the primary and secondary school level. This would address a student's preparation entering colleges and university. Many students come into college with such inadequate levels of preparation that they must spend much of their early coursework in remedial education classes, where gains in higher critical thinking and complex reasoning are unlikely to occur. And here's a young student trying to outsource her homework to India, which doesn't add to her learning whatsoever. Another recommended change is at the leadership level in higher education. Institutions need to develop a culture of learning if undergraduate education is to be improved. Students' success becomes an institution priority when leaders make it so. Currently, institutions that treat students as consumers, as in another quote from the book, in their efforts to cater to students' consumers, colleges and universities have arguably moved even further from their responsibility to structure social behavior and provide a setting conducive to rigorous and moral development. And here's a cartoon of one of our consumers/students. And an example of this are college dormitories, which were instruments designed for shaping students' individual and social academic development, but have now turned into revenue and cost centers that need to be managed primarily for financial ends. And here's a good picture of student housing at Arizona State University. I think this is a proposed developmental picture. Here's a typical dorm, looking more like an entry-level professional apartment. And here's a recreational room at a college and university, emphasizing the social aspects of college lifestyle. and students are catching on to this consumerization of the students. Another avenue for reform would be to improve curriculum and instruction. All higher education institutions could focus increased attention on the academic component of undergraduate learning without fundamental challenges to the existing system. These reforms do not have to radically change the current system. Spending time studying, having faculty who hold high expectations, and offering courses that require reasonable amounts of reading and writing are associated with students' learning during the first 2 years. So as you can see, these changes can be easily integrated into the current system. Another recommendation is to facilitate learning, not just persistence. Students spend considerably more time socializing than studying. While these social experiences may yield higher graduation rates, it is not clear that they would also facilitate students' cognitive development. Here's a graph on how college students spend their time based on a 2007 survey. As you can see, 51% spend time socializing, recreating, and other things, while only 7% admit to spending time studying. And as you might guess, a lot of that 51% recreating, socializing is partying and enjoying the college, quote-unquote, college lifestyle. So these students might end up with a degree that looks something like this. Sorry that you learned nothing. Thank you for the tuition dollars, and best of luck for the rest of your life. With the rest of your life. Holding the institution accountable to make sure learning is in fact taking place should be a point of emphasis going forward. One proposed remedy for higher education inattention to student learning is the implementation of externally mandated accountability systems on colleges, as illustrated by Richard Aram in this interview.
Administrator, I would ask a slightly different question. Our book finds that there are pockets of excellence, and then there are other pockets where students are moving through colleges and universities with little asked of them and little learned. And every college and university that we studied had both those pockets. And so what I would ask an administrator, if I was either a parent or a reporter, is what are you doing to assess learning on your campus, to identify the pockets of excellence and the pockets that need improvement? What are your plans for improving those areas that need improvement? How are you measuring and assessing it to make sure those plans are put in place? Those are type of basic questions that one would expect an administrator of any school, elementary, secondary, college, and university, would be able to answer.
And finally, the book ends with a call to reform. A renewed commitment to improving undergraduate education is unlikely to occur without changes to the organizational cultures of colleges and universities that reestablish the institutional primacy of these functions, instilling in the next generation of young adults a lifelong love of learning, an inability to think critically and communicate effectively, and a willingness to embrace and assume adult responsibility. These changes may be difficult and challenging and involve effort on a variety of levels. These challenges should not deter us from our purpose of improving undergraduate education. As Kennedy reminds us in his speech about reaching for the moon,
we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
so we must accept this challenge to reform higher education for the future of our students. So to summarize, a mandate to reform is about transforming higher education through student preparation, challenging higher education leadership, improving curriculum and instruction, facilitating learning, not just persistence, and lastly, increasing transparency and accountability in higher education. Thank you.